Back. Well, the hypocrisy of President Trump's tariffs on India for buying large amounts of Russian energy is now beyond dispute. Statements made by Trump administration on how now don't even attempt to hide this hypocrisy. Even big meetings that Trump attends, like the one in Alaska earlier this month, reveal more details that show how he is double dealing with the global economy and weaponizing the dollar against developing economies. Take, for example, President Putin's revelation in that meeting that bilateral trade between the United States and Russia has in fact expanded by at least 20% since Trump returned to the White House. Listen in, Putin might call this symbolic, but Trump's actions are anything but symbolic.
Incidentally, when the new administration came to power, bilateral trade started to grow. It's still very symbolic. Still, we have a growth of 20%. As I've said, we have a lot of dimensions for joint work. It is clear that the U.S. and Russian investment and business cooperation has tremendous potential. Russia and the U.S. can offer each other so much in trade, digital, high-tech, and in space exploration. We see that Arctic cooperation is also very positive.
Well, like I said, Putin might call this symbolic, but Trump's actions are anything but symbolic. At the same time, President Trump's Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has all but confirmed today that maneuvering that the USA is indulging in to profit off the war in Ukraine, where at the end they want to whine that India doesn't care about dying Ukrainian children. On the other end, just look at Scott Bessent's smirk in this clip where he details how American weapons are now making their way to Ukraine.
Which, once this conflict stops, could pay off big for the American taxpayer. We can recoup our investment. If Ukraine does well, we do well. If the conflict stops, and the conflict's got to stop for the economic partnership to really kick in, we're going to start with some investments now. So I think President Trump is very vigilant. Right now, we are selling arms to the Europeans, who are then selling them on to the Ukrainians, and President Trump's taking a 10% markup on.
Well, from February 2022 to date, America has provided nearly $175 billion worth of aid to Ukraine to continue the fight against Russia. Of this, nearly 66 to 67 billion was direct military aid. On the other, as discussed, front American weapons manufacturers like Northrop and Grumman, Raytheon and Lockheed Martin have sold nearly $200 billion worth of equipment to Europe just in 2024, with Ukraine unsurprisingly being the top destination for these weapons. American equipment from 31 Abrams class tanks costing some $4.3 million each to over 10,000 Javelin long-range missiles, which cost $78,000 to $80,000 apiece, and over 120,000 other anti-armor weapons have been deployed by Ukrainian forces in this war. From small arms and body armor to tanks and fighter jets and ballistic missiles, America has provided it all to Ukraine to continue the war against Russia. Yet it is India that is enabling the war. The United States is the single largest profiteer from any and all wars in the world. Their economy strength was built upon the world wars, where they manufactured and sold weapons to the allies, for which they have been extracting payments from the likes of Great Britain up until the last penny was paid in 2006, and similarly from Germany in 2010. On the 27th of July this year, President Trump met with President of European Union Ursula von der Leyen in his private resort in Scotland, of all places. The outcome of that meeting has been confirmed today, and the key highlight is that in exchange for a 15% tariff on most exports to the USA, the European Union has committed to buy $750 billion worth of energy imports and semiconductors from the USA over the next 3 years. The European Union has also committed to an investment of $600 billion in the USA, which includes significant investments in America's defense manufacturing industry. For those keeping track, that's effectively $1.5 trillion that the European Union will now push into the United States. This is above and beyond the increase of oil and LNG imports from US to Europe since 2022, when the war began. In 2022 alone, LNG shipments from USA to Europe were more than doubled, and the USA today is the world's largest exporter of liquefied natural gas. The United States has set new records of energy exports to Europe every year since the war began in 2022, from accounting for 20% of Europe's LNG requirements in 2021. The USA over 2 years increased its export to account for nearly 48%. That is half of all LNG imports bound for the European Union in 2023, according to the US Energy Information Admin. Overall, where India imported almost $51.3 billion worth of crude oil from Russia in 2024, American energy exports to Europe for 2024 stand at just over $83 billion. So America is raking in more from selling just LNG to the European Union than India is giving to Russia, while crude oil trade is at par from both trade routes. However, for our trade, we now have to pay 50% tariffs to export to the USA, while America ramps up its production and threatens smaller economies like Venezuela, which is a whole different conversation. It is high time President Trump realizes that he cannot have his cake and eat it too.